Ambassador Elena Vasquez had spent 14 years learning how to speak with aliens. She knew their languages. She understood their customs. She had memorized the complex rules of galactic politics. But nothing in those 14 years had prepared her for the message that arrived on her personal terminal at 3 in the morning. The message was short and carried the highest priority seal of the Galactic Concord. It contained only 3 words: emergency session. Immediately, Elena dressed quickly and made her way to the transport station. The Galactic Concord was a coalition of 312 species that governed known space. They made laws, settled disputes, and kept peace among the stars. Humanity had joined this great alliance only 40 years ago. Most alien species still considered humans to be young and primitive. They tolerated Earth's representatives, but rarely took them seriously. The transport ship carried Elena across the void to Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Concord. The Grand Chamber stood at the heart of this ancient planet, a massive dome that could hold representatives from every member species. As Elena entered through the human delegation's portal, she immediately sensed that something was terribly wrong. The chamber was in chaos. Holographic. Images of alien ambassadors flickered and shouted in dozens of languages. The translation systems struggled to keep up with the overlapping voices. Elena saw fear in eyes that had never shown fear before. She saw panic in species known for their calm wisdom. Whatever had happened, it had shaken the very foundation of galactic civilization. At the center of the chamber stood High Arbiter Kethrin. He was a Silurian, a being made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. The Silurians had guided the Concord for thousands of years. They were known for their patience and their steady leadership. But today, Kethrin's crystal body flickered with colors that Elena had learned to recognize as distress. "Order," the Arbiter called out, his voice carrying across the chamber through the translation systems. "We must have order." Slowly, the chaos subsided. Representatives returned to their designated positions. Elena took her place in the human section, a small area near the back of the chamber. She noticed that many alien eyes turned toward her with expressions she could not read. 3 days ago, the Arbiter began. Our long-range sensor network detected an anomaly in the outer reaches of dark space. After careful analysis, we have confirmed our worst fears. He paused, and in that moment of silence, Elena felt the weight of ancient terror pressing down upon the chamber. The hollow tide has awakened. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Screams erupted from a dozen species. Some representatives collapsed. Others began to weep or pray to gods that Elena had never heard of. She watched in confusion, not understanding what could cause such universal terror. An elder representative from the Mendari species, a tall being with 4 arms and skin like polished wood, stepped forward to explain for the benefit of younger species like humanity. His voice trembled as he spoke. "The hollow tide is a machine swarm," he said. "It is older than any civilization in this chamber. Older, perhaps, than the stars themselves. Every 3,000 years, it emerges from dark space and sweeps across the galaxy. It consumes everything in its path. Worlds, fleets, entire species." He lowered his head. "The last time the tide emerged, 47 species were erased from existence. Billions upon billions of lives ended in a matter of months. Our ancestors survived only by fleeing to the farthest corners of the galaxy and hiding until the swarm retreated." Elena felt cold understanding wash over her. The Concord, this mighty alliance of ancient civilizations, was terrified of something it had never found a way to defeat. They had survived not through victory, but through retreat. "We have analyzed the tide's projected path," the Arbiter continued. "It will pass directly through the heart of Concord territory. 114 inhabited worlds lie in its trajectory. The estimated civilian population at risk is..." He paused, struggling with the number. "Approximately 100 billion sentient beings." Elena's heart stopped. 100 billion. The number was too large to truly comprehend. It was more than the entire human population of Earth and all its colony worlds combined. "The Council of Elders has reached a decision," the Arbiter announced. "We must enact the protocol of preservation. All species in the tide's path will begin immediate evacuation. We will sacrifice the threatened sectors to buy time for the rest of the Concorde to prepare secondary evacuation routes. Lena listened in growing disbelief as the plan was explained. The Concorde intended to abandon 100 billion of its own citizens. They would leave entire worlds to be consumed while the rest of the galaxy ran away. "This is the only way," a Velthari ambassador declared. The Velthari were beings of pure energy among the oldest species in the Concorde. "We have studied the tide for millions of years. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be avoided." One by one, species began to vote in favor of the evacuation plan. Alina watched as 311 civilizations chose to abandon their people rather than fight. They spoke of wisdom and survival. They spoke of acceptable losses and necessary sacrifices. They spoke as if they were discussing numbers on a screen rather than living beings with families and hopes and dreams. When the arbiter called for humanity's vote, Lena stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. She could feel their expectations. They assumed the young species would follow the lead of its elders, as it always had. But Alina was not thinking about galactic politics anymore. She was thinking about her grandmother who had told her stories about human history. Stories about people who refused to surrender even when all hope seemed lost. Stories about soldiers who stood against impossible odds because some things were worth fighting for. She thought about those 100 billion lives that the Concorde was ready to abandon. "Earth requests a recess," Elena said, keeping her voice calm and steady. 24 hours. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. The arbiter's crystal form pulsed with impatience, but the rules of the Concorde were clear. Any species could request a recess before casting a vote. "Granted," he said reluctantly. "But time is short, Ambassador. We cannot delay long." Elena nodded once and turned to leave the chamber. As she walked, she activated her encrypted communication device and connected to Earth's emergency channel. "This is Ambassador Vasquez," she said quietly. "I need to speak with the Council immediately. Priority 1. She paused at the chamber's exit and looked back at the assembled representatives. 311 species had chosen to run. They thought humanity would follow. They were wrong. Elena's message reached Earth within minutes. The quantum relay system that connected human colonies across the stars carried her words at speeds that still amazed scientists. By the time she had returned to her quarters on Nexus Prime, the United Earth Council was already gathering. President Maria Santos sat at the head of the table in the council chamber. Around her were the most powerful people in human civilization: military commanders, scientific advisors, and political leaders from every major nation on Earth and its colonies. Some attended in person. Others appeared as holographic projections from distant worlds. All of them listened in silence as Alina explained what had happened in the Grand Chamber. "Let me understand this clearly," President Santos said when Elena finished. "The Concorde's plan is to abandon 100 billion people to these machines. They will not even attempt to fight." "That is correct, Madam President," Elena replied. "The elder races believe the hollow tide cannot be defeated. They have survived previous emergencies only by hiding." General Marcus Chen, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, leaned forward in his chair. His face was hard, with barely contained anger. "They want to leave 100 billion people to die because fighting is too difficult." He said, "These are the great civilizations that are supposed to be wiser than us." "General, the hollow tide has destroyed 47 species in recorded history," Elena said. "The elder races are afraid. They have seen what happens to those who try to resist." "Fear is no excuse for abandoning your own people," Chen replied. "Fear is the reason you fight harder, not the reason you run away." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the head of Earth's Xenotechnology Division, raised her hand to speak. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Ambassador, what do we actually know about this hollow tide?" she asked. "Has anyone shared technical data with us?" Alina shook her head. "The elder races guard their historical records closely. They consider humanity too young to access their archives. But from what was discussed in the chamber, the tide appears to be a machine swarm. It operates on predictable patterns, emerging every 3,000 years." Dr. Tanaka smiled slightly. "Predictable patterns. That is interesting. Machines are logical. They follow programming. And anything that follows programming has weaknesses that can be exploited. President Santos looked around the table at her advisors. She saw determination in their eyes. She saw anger. She saw the stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had carried humanity through every crisis in its history. "What are our options?" she asked. For the next 12 hours, the greatest minds in human civilization worked without rest. Engineers examined every piece of data about the hollow tide that Elena had been able to gather. Military strategists developed battle plans based on the swarm's known behavior. Scientists proposed weapons and technologies that the Concord had banned as too dangerous or too unpredictable. General Chen commanded the military planning session. He had spent his entire career preparing for battles that he hoped would never come. Now, faced with the greatest threat in galactic history, he felt something strange. Excitement. Excitement. The Concord thinks in terms of defense and retreat, he explained to his staff. They react to threats rather than confronting them. We will think differently. We will take the battle to the enemy. He pulled up a holographic map of the tide's projected path. The swarm will have to pass through the Carthex corridor to reach the populated sectors. It is a natural choke point, a narrow passage between two massive nebulae. If we position our forces there, we can control the battlefield. Our fleet is small, compared to the Concord's combined forces, one of his officers pointed out. Then we will fight smarter, Chen replied. Humanity has always been outnumbered. We won our wars through creativity, determination, and the willingness to take risks that others considered insane. Meanwhile, Dr. Tanaka led a team of scientists in analyzing the tide's behavior patterns. They worked through the night, drinking coffee and arguing about theories until the early hours of the morning. Look at this, Dr. Tanaka said, pointing to a pattern in the data. The tide's coordination system shows signs of centralized control. The individual drones are not independent. They receive commands from a core intelligence somewhere within the swarm. Like a hive mind, one of her colleagues suggested. Exactly. And if we can reach that core intelligence, if we can disrupt it somehow, She paused, her eyes widening as an idea formed. We could turn the entire swarm against itself. She began sketching formulas on her tablet, working faster as the concept took shape. A virus, she whispered. Not a physical weapon. A code. Something that can infect the tide's command systems and corrupt its programming from within. It was a wild idea. It might not work, but it was the kind of crazy, brilliant thinking that had defined human innovation for centuries. By the time Elena's 24-hour recess neared its end, humanity had assembled something unprecedented. They had a complete battle plan. They had weapon designs based on technologies the Concord had forbidden. They had Dr. Tanaka's virus theory, still unproven, but full of promise. And they had something else. A decision. President Santos addressed the council. One final time before Elena returned to the Grand Chamber. For 40 years. The Concord has treated humanity like children, she said. They have given us a small seat at their table and expected us to be grateful. They have called us primitive and young and inexperienced. Today, they will learn what our species is truly capable of. She turned to Elena's holographic image. Ambassador Vasquez, you have full authority to speak for humanity in this matter. Tell the Concord our decision. Tell them that Earth refuses to abandon 100 billion people to die without a fight. Tell them that humanity is going to war. Elena nodded, her expression calm, but her heart racing. No. And if they refuse to join us, Madam President? Santos smiled grimly. Then we will save them anyway. Whether they like it or not, Lena ended the transmission and prepared to return to the Grand Chamber. In her hand, she held a data chip containing humanity's war plan. In her heart, she carried the weight of her entire species' hopes. The galaxy thought humanity was weak. The elder races believed that this young species would fall in. Line like all the others, they were about to. Learn how wrong they were. The Grand Chamber fell. Completely silent as Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked back to the speaking platform. Every eye in the room turned to watch her. Representatives from 311 species waited to hear. Humanity's vote on the evacuation plan. Alina moved differently now. She still carried herself with diplomatic grace, but something had changed in the way she held her shoulders. There was steel in her spine that had not been there before. The alien delegates who had dealt with humans for decades recognized the change immediately. They had seen it in human soldiers, in human explorers. In human leaders throughout history, it was the look of someone who had made a decision and would not back down. High Arbiter Kethvorin's crystal form pulsed with colors of anticipation. Ambassador Vasquez, has humanity reached a decision regarding the protocol of preservation? Alina stepped onto the central platform where speakers addressed the full assembly. She looked out at the gathered representatives. She saw the Velthari beings of pure energy who had existed for millions of years. She saw the Mendari, the Silurians, and dozens of other ancient species. They all expected the same thing. They expected the young species to fall in line. Yes, Arbiter, Alina said. Humanity has reached a decision. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Around the chamber, translation systems hummed quietly as they prepared to carry her words to every species present. The Concord has voted to flee, Alina began. Her voice was calm, but carried across the entire chamber. 311 species have chosen to abandon their own people to the hollow tide. You call this wisdom. You call this survival. You speak of acceptable losses and necessary sacrifices, and she let those words hang in the air for a moment. Humanity calls it cowardice. The reaction was immediate. Gasps of shock erupted from dozens of delegations. Angry protests rose from the elder species. The Arbiter's form flashed crimson as he demanded silence. Ambassador, you forget your place, the Velthari representative said, his energy form flickering with indignation. Your species has been part of this concord for merely 40 years. You do not have the standing to insult civilizations that have existed for millions of years. Lena turned to face him directly. I forget nothing, Ambassador. For 40 years, humanity has watched this concord operate. We have learned your technologies. We have studied your histories. We have observed your politics. And we have reached a conclusion that your elder races refuse to accept. She activated her personal holographic projector, and suddenly the chamber was filled with tactical displays. Fleet movements appeared in glowing lines. Weapon specifications scrolled across floating screens. Strategic analyses covered every available space. The hollow tide is not invincible, Alina declared. It is a machine swarm operating on ancient programming. It follows predictable patterns. It has weaknesses that can be exploited, and it can be destroyed permanently if someone has the courage to fight. Murmurs of confusion spread through the chamber. Some representatives leaned forward with interest. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The Mendari elder rose to speak. His wooden features were twisted with concern. Young Ambassador, your optimism is understandable, but misguided. The tide has consumed species far more advanced than humanity. What makes you believe your people can succeed where so many others have failed? Alina smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Several nearby delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, because Elder, our confidence is born from experience. Humanity spent its entire existence fighting against extinction. We survived ice ages that covered our world in frozen death. We survived plagues that killed millions. We survived predators and disasters and wars among ourselves. We have dragged our species through fire again and again, and we have never stopped fighting. Not once. Not ever. She turned back to address the full assembly. The Concord votes to run. Humanity votes differently. The tactical display shifted to show fleet positions converging on a single point in space. Earth is mobilizing its full military capacity. Every warship, every soldier, every weapon we possess. Our colony worlds are converting their factories to war production. Within 30 days, we will assemble the largest armada in human history, and we will meet the hollow tide in battle. Stunned silence gripped the chamber. No one had expected this. No one had imagined that the youngest species in the Concord would stand alone against a threat that had terrified the galaxy for millions of years. You will be destroyed, the Velthari ambassador said. Your entire species will be wiped from existence. Perhaps, Alina acknowledged, but we will die fighting for what is right. We will die protecting the innocent lives that you have chosen to abandon. And when the history of this galaxy is written, it will remember that humanity stood while the great civilizations of the Concord fled in fear. She stepped forward, her eyes sweeping across the assembly. We do not ask the Concord's permission. We do not require your approval, but we are offering you a choice. Her voice hardened, carrying the weight of her entire species behind it. The time for war has come. You can stand with humanity and fight for your people. You can join us in defending the innocent and destroying this ancient evil, or you can run away into the darkness and pray that we succeed without you. She stepped back from the platform and crossed her arms. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. The tide will not wait for your debates and your votes and your endless discussions. The time for talking is over. The chamber remained frozen in shock. Then, slowly, movement began. Representatives turned to whisper with their colleagues. Holographic communications flickered as delegations contacted their home worlds. The carefully maintained order of the Concord was crumbling before everyone's eyes. High Arbiter Kethvorin stepped forward, his crystal form cycling through colors that Alina could not interpret. Ambassador Vasquez, you have disrupted the unity of this Concord. You have challenged decisions made by civilizations far older and wiser than your own. Do you understand the consequences of what you have done? Alina met his gaze without flinching. Understand, Arbiter. I understand that 100 billion innocent beings are counting on someone to save them. I understand that your ancient wisdom has failed them. And I understand that humanity will not stand by while they die. She raised her chin. History will judge us all, Arbiter. I intend for humanity to be judged kindly. She walked away from the platform, leaving chaos in her wake. Behind her, the grand chamber erupted. Into the most heated debate it had seen in 1,000 years, the galaxy would never be the same. The hours following Elena's declaration were the most chaotic in the Concord's long history. The grand chamber became a battlefield of words and emotions. Delegations argued with each other. Representatives sent frantic messages to their home worlds. The careful order that had governed galactic politics for millennia was falling apart. Alina watched from the human section as the elder races tried desperately to restore control. The Velthari ambassador called for unity. The Mindari elder pleaded for calm. High Arbiter Kethvorin demanded that the assembly return to proper procedure. But their voices were lost in the storm that humanity had unleashed. The first crack in the old order came from an unexpected source. The Karathi were an insectoid species. Warriors by nature and tradition, their homeworld sat directly in the path of the hollow tide, according to the Concord's plan. Their entire civilization would be sacrificed to buy time for others to escape. Their representative, a warrior queen named Zeshtal, rose from her seat and crossed the chamber floor. She moved with the dangerous grace of a predator, her armored body gleaming under the chamber lights. Every eye followed her as she walked past the speaking platform and stopped beside Alina. The Karathi have no wish to die as refugees, Zeshtal declared, her voice clicking and buzzing through the translation system. We are warriors. We would rather fall in battle than flee like prey. If humanity fights, the Karathi fight beside them. The chamber fell silent. Then, slowly, another delegation began to move. The Viaran were aquatic beings who lived in massive water-filled ships. Their original homeworld had been consumed by the hollow tide during its last emergence. For 3,000 years, they had wandered the stars as refugees, carrying the memory of their lost home, their ambassador. A graceful creature with flowing fins and luminous scales glided forward to stand with Alina and Zeshtel. Our ancestors swore an oath, the Viaran ambassador said. They promised that their children would never flee again. They promised that the Viaran would stand and fight when the tide returned. Today, we honor that oath. Today, the Viaran stand with humanity. One by one, other species broke away from the Concord consensus. The Tharaki, a reptilian people known for their fierce independence. The Kelish, small beings with brilliant minds who had always resented the elder race's condescension. The Mordecai, a warrior culture that had chafed under the Concord's peaceful restrictions for centuries. Young races, small civilizations, and those who had always felt like outsiders in the Concord gathered around humanity's banner. They came with different reasons. Some were angry at being abandoned. Some wanted revenge for ancestors lost to the tide. Some simply believed that humanity was right and the elder races were wrong. By the time the session ended, 43 species had pledged their support to. The media had already started calling the Human Alliance. The elder races watched in horror as their carefully maintained order collapsed. Millions of years of diplomatic tradition and political balance had been destroyed in a single day by one young species that refused to accept defeat. The Velthari ambassador made one final attempt to stop the exodus. He marched toward annihilation, he warned, his energy form pulsing with intensity. The hollow tide cannot be defeated. Every species that has tried to fight it has been destroyed. You are leading these young civilizations to their deaths. Lena stepped forward to answer him. Around her stood representatives from 43 worlds, all watching to see what she would say. Perhaps you are right, Ambassador. Perhaps we will fail. Perhaps the tide will consume us all. She paused and looked at her new allies. But these species have chosen to take that risk. They have chosen hope over fear. They have chosen to fight for their people instead of abandoning them. She turned back to face the Velthari. And when we destroy the tide, Ambassador, when we do what your ancient wisdom said was impossible, I expect the Concord to remember who saved them. The Velthari's form flickered with emotions that Alina could not read. Then, without another word, he withdrew from the speaking area. The elder races had nothing left to say. Alina addressed her new allies. 43 species, thousands of worlds, billions of beings who had chosen to trust humanity with their survival. We have 30 days before the tide reaches the Carthex corridor, she said. 30 days to combine our fleets, coordinate our strategies, and prepare our weapons. It will not be easy. Many of us have never worked together before. Some of us have been rivals or even enemies in the past. She looked at each delegation in turn. But none of that matters now. What matters is that we stand together. What matters is that we fight for each other. What matters is that we do not let 100 billion innocent lives be sacrificed because someone decided it was easier to run away. Zeshtel stepped forward, her warriors bearing commanding instant respect. The Karathi will provide our assault fleets. Our ships are built for close combat. We will strike the tide's heart while others hold its attention. The Viaran ambassador spoke next. Our people have studied the tide for generations. We know its patterns and behaviors. We will share everything we have learned with human strategists. Other species offered their strengths. The Tharaki brought advanced energy weapons. The Kalish contributed their scientific expertise. The Mordecai pledged their legendary ground forces for any boarding operations. Alina felt something stirring in her chest. It was pride, not just for humanity, but for all these species who had found the courage to stand up when their elders had failed them. In 30 days, we meet the hollow tide in battle, she said. In 30 days, we show the galaxy what courage looks like. In 30 days, we make history. She raised her fist, a human gesture that her new allies quickly learned to mirror. For our people, for our worlds, for the future, 43 voices answered her call, speaking in dozens of languages that the translation systems rendered into one unified cry. For the future, the Human Alliance was born, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if hope could triumph over ancient terror. The elder races watched from the shadows, certain that they were witnessing the birth of a tragedy. They were wrong. They were witnessing the birth of a legend. The Battle of the Carthex. Corridor would be remembered as the moment the galaxy changed forever. 32 days after Elena's declaration, the Human Alliance Armada gather? In the narrow passage between two massive nebulae. 4,000 warships from 44 species stretched across the darkness of space. Human dreadnoughts flew alongside Karathi assault carriers. Viren torpedo ships held formation with Tharaki energy cruisers. It was the largest combined fleet in galactic history, and it stood directly in the path of ancient destruction. Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship U.S. Defiance. Through the massive viewports, he could see the other ships of the fleet, their running lights creating a constellation of hope against the void. Behind them lay 100 billion lives. Ahead lay the hollow tide. The tide emerged from dark space like a spreading stain. Sensors detected billions of individual machines, drones, harvest vessels, processing ships, and things that defied classification. The swarm stretched across millions of kilometers, blotting out the stars themselves. It was vast beyond imagination, ancient beyond memory, and it had never been stopped. Chen activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached every ship in the armada. "This is Admiral Chen. What you see before you has destroyed civilizations for millions of years. It has consumed worlds and erased species from existence. The elder races told us it could not be defeated. They told us to run. They told us to hide." He paused, looking at the impossible wall of machines approaching them. "We are not here to run. We are not here to hide. We are here to fight, and we are going to win." The battle began with fire. Human dreadnoughts opened with antimatter cascades. Weapons so powerful that the Concorde had banned them centuries ago. The beams tore through the tide's forward elements, vaporizing thousands of drones in seconds. Karathi assault pods launched directly into the swarm, their warrior crews seeking out coordination nodes to destroy in close combat. Viren torpedo carriers exploited gaps in the machine formation with surgical precision, their knowledge of tide behavior allowing them to predict the swarm's movements. The tide responded. Billions of drones surged forward, adapting to the Alliance's tactics with terrifying speed. For every machine destroyed, 10 more took its place. The swarm began to curve around the fleet's flanks, threatening to surround and overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Ships began to fall. A Kellish science vessel was torn apart by a wave of harvester drones. To Mordecai cruisers were overwhelmed while covering a damaged carrier's retreat. The tide consumed everything it touched, breaking down ships and crews alike into raw materials, but the Alliance did not break. They had expected losses. They had prepared for sacrifice. And they had one weapon that the tide had never encountered deep within the swarm. 100 small stealth vessels crept toward their targets. They were built using principles so strange that the tide's sensors could not detect them. They appeared as nothing more than background radiation, invisible among the billions of machines. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had designed these vessels herself. She had spent every moment of the past 30 days perfecting the payload they carried. It was not a bomb. It was not a conventional weapon at all. It was a virus, self-replicating code designed to infect the tide's ancient command systems. The stealth vessels reached the heart of the swarm. There, pulsing with dark energy, floated the tide's central intelligence, the ancient mind that controlled every drone and harvester and processing ship. It was a construct older than most stars, built by a species that had been dust for eons. The vessels released their payload. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The virus spread through the tide's command network like fire through dry grass. It rewrote the swarm's fundamental programming, turning the tide's greatest strength into its ultimate weakness. The machines that had worked together for millions of years suddenly saw each other as enemies. Across the swarm, drones began attacking drones. Harvest ships consumed their own escorts. Processing vessels tore themselves apart as conflicting commands scrambled their systems. The ancient intelligence that guided the tide screamed across every frequency as its children devoured it. From within, Admiral Chen watched in awe as the impossible happened. The hollow tide, the terror of the galaxy, was dying. Not from external weapons, but from its own corrupted programming. Within 3 hours, it was over. The last tide machines went dark. Their ancient purpose finally ended. The void was filled with debris and silence and the impossible reality of victory. Chen activated the fleet. Channel one final time. All ships. This is Admiral Chen. The hollow tide has been destroyed. Repeat, the tide has been destroyed. We have one. Across 4,000 ships, beings from 44 species erupted in celebration. Humans wept and embraced. Karathi warriors raised their weapons in triumph. Viaran sang songs of victory that their ancestors had only dreamed of singing. The galaxy had been saved, Ambassador. Alina Vasquez returned to the Grand Chamber 6 months later. The Concord she faced was fundamentally changed. The elder races sat in humbled silence as representatives of the human alliance entered the chamber. They carried with them the salvaged remains of the Tide's central intelligence, proof that the impossible had been achieved. High Arbiter, Kethvorin, approached Alina. His crystal form pulsed with colors she now understood as deep. Respect, humanity, and its allies have done what our civilizations believed could never be done, he said. The galaxy owes you a debt beyond measure. How can we possibly repay what you have given us? Alina looked at her allies, the 44 species who had bled and sacrificed beside humanity. Then she looked at the elder races, still struggling to understand how their ancient wisdom had failed. The old Concord was built on fear, she said. Fear of the unknown. Fear of conflict. Fear of change. That fear nearly cost you everything. She stepped forward. The human alliance was built on something different. We were built on courage, on sacrifice, and on the belief that some things are worth fighting for. We do not want payment, Arbiter. We do not want your gratitude. We want partners. She extended her hand toward him. The tide is gone. But the universe is vast, and other threats will come. The question is, will you face them hiding in the darkness, or will you stand in the light beside us? The Arbiter's crystal form shifted and shimmered. Then, slowly he reached out and touched Elena's hand. We will stand, he said quietly. Beside you. Across the chamber, species began to rise. Ancient civilizations joined with young ones. Former rivals stood side by side. The old order was gone, replaced by something new, something stronger, something built on hope instead of fear. At the center of it all stood humanity, the youngest and strangest and most stubborn species the galaxy had ever known. They had been told they were primitive. They had been told they were foolish. They had been told they could not win. They had proven everyone wrong. The time for hiding was over. The age of humanity had begun.